Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Saturn Return Diaries podcast. My name is Courtney. I'm your host. Welcome back. If you're new here, hi. We talk about Saturn in astrology, specifically the time between like 27 and 31, which is known as your Saturn return. And it's a wild time, like wild time. So every time I have guests on here, I'm like, basically learning so it's so selfish because I'm learning so much for myself and taking their medicine and integrating it into my own life. But that's the hope that I have for everybody who listens to this. So if you're here, thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you're on YouTube. And then if you're in the, earbud places or listening in your car, then yeah, just give us a rating and review over on Saturn Return Diaries on Apple Podcasts if you feel called to. But without further ado, so you can stop hearing me ramble, let's get into this episode. I'm excited. I always love connecting with people on Instagram. It's my freaking favorite thing about the internet and how it brings people together. So super excited to introduce you guys to Nicole today. So hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah. Can you tell people, okay, I actually wanted to ask you this because when you booked in your time to do this, I was like, oh, Nicole Luna. I'm like, is that actually your name?
No. So I have like a little bit of a backstory about my spiritual business and kind of how I came up with that name. Well, it's my daughter's middle name, Luna, which is where I got it from. But I was a school teacher for a really, really long time. And I wanted some sense of privacy when it came to, the possibility of parents or students potentially finding me online. And then I just didn't feel right to get rid of it when I went full time with my work. So yeah, so Nicole Luna it is.
Amazing. Oh my God. I love that so much. And also, if you guys are not on YouTube, this background that you have, like, I'm obsessed. Like the moons and everything is so beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
I already love that. Like this like spiritual business like MO. I love it so much. Okay, so I always ask people this, you've probably heard me say it, but I'm like, who are you? Like who is the person I'm talking to, the soul? Who are you?
Good question. And I know you asked this question and I should have prepared something for this question. So my name is Nicole. I'm 34 years old, so not super fresh out of my Saturn return, but fresh enough to remember quite a bit of it. I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a sister, a daughter, and I'm a psychic medium, and I'm also a witch, and I have been for a little over 15 years now. So it's always been part of my spiritual practice. It's always been something I felt intensely called to. I feel like there's past life stuff there. Yeah, I own a business called Highest Good Readings. As I had mentioned before, I was a school teacher for over 10 years before I decided to take that leap of faith and go full time with my business, which was a big leap of faith.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into that. And I'm already,
Yes.
Okay. So when we're filming this, recording, it's Scorpio season. And we're going to get into what your sun, moon, rising are. But as soon as you said you're a witch, like I had this like I don't know why. And I
Thank
think,
God.
yeah, like it's, oh my God, someone like we get it. Like we understand. And this like, almost like a permission. So, I don't know how to put that in words, but my Scorpio moon is like, so I can't wait to hear more about that. But I love the way that you described all of that. And I also love that you let us know that you were a school teacher for 10 years. So I can't hear more about that.
Yes.
And you said that you're a mom. So you have a daughter?
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and that's it, at least for now.
We shall see post Saturn.
We shall see. Yeah. It was funny. My mom said something the other day to me. She's like, oh, she's getting old enough to kind of take care of herself. And like, maybe it's time to think about, I'm like, so just as life gets easy, we're going to make it really, really, really hard again. So I don't know how I totally feel about it, but I always thought I'd have like a whole, band of kids or whatever because of being a teacher, but it's so different when they're yours and you don't get to send them home with their parents at the end of the day.
Yeah, you are that parent.
You are the parent. Yes.
Oh gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I might ask you some, like, I'm so interested in hearing about people who are like psychic mediums, witches, like intuitives, and them having children. And obviously the fact that you are a teacher as well, like my background is in education. So I'm so interested on how children in these families are. So we might circle back to that.
For sure.
Okay. So what are your sun, moon, and rising? Let's profile you a bit here.
Okay, cool. So I have Capricorn sun in 29 degrees of Capricorn. So I like to say that I know there's no such thing as cusps, but if there ever was, maybe that would be me. My moon is in Virgo and I have Cancer rising. Yeah. Softens the blow just slightly.
I love that so much. Softens the blow. I always pull people's charts up and kind of like look as we're talking. And I love that you brought that up about the cusps, because I haven't talked about that much on this podcast, but I do mention that over on Bravely Beautiful. And yeah, so you have your sun at 29 degrees of Capricorn, which is like an anaretic degree. So technically, like if it was at 0 degrees of Aquarius, you would have that like cusp sort of energy, but it's super close to your Aquarius house, which is also conjunct your Mercury in Aquarius. So you have these very Aquarian ways of communicating and probably thinking because of that Mercury there. So love that. Yeah, that's so cool. So, and then also your Saturn sign is in
Sagittarius. Did we say that? Yeah, Sagittarius. Yes. Just double check.
Yeah. No, you know it. Yeah. And it's in the 5th house. So yeah, super excited to dive into this. But I'm just curious, like, do you relate to your signs from what you know and kind of have, moved through in your life?
I definitely relate to the Capricorn sun. I feel like Capricorn sun people have a pretty bad reputation in terms of having like resting bitch face and like, being like the 9-to-5 kind of like work money hungry sort of people. And I think some of that, let's call it ambition and maybe just that work ethic comes from our personal ability to achieve, and then also the pressure that we kind of put on ourselves. I think that Capricorn is probably one of the shyer of the zodiac signs, so that standoffish vibe may not be because we think we're better than you, but just because we're like really nervous and like feeling like, we're our own biggest judge of character. I definitely relate with the Capricorn thing. I know I heard a phrase once that Capricorn people are old when they're young and young when they're old. And I feel that that really applies to me. I was that kid in elementary school that, when you take your school photos, people would often be like, oh, who's that? Is that like the teacher's assistant? Is that like your teacher's, I don't know, is that the secretary? And it was me. It was always me. I was that kid that went trick-or-treating and the question was always like, aren't you a little old to be trick-or-treating, at 8 years old? I had that very mature kind of attitude from a young age. And then now I feel like I'm like doing all the things that I should have done when I was in high school, like considering my first tattoo, and I'm doing all these stuff. I'm 34, but like definitely feeling more youthful and more ambitious than I did as a kid. As a kid, I was very much a perfectionist and still deal with that from time to time. It manifests as anxiety, I would say, with my Virgo moon. But
yeah, I was just going to say there's that Virgo. I love the way you described that actually about Capricorn. Like they are very old souls in a
Yeah.
sense, and serious. And, it's like, okay, got to have things kind of together. And as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. My grandpa is a Capricorn and he is old now and he's having the time of his life. Like he is thriving, So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that to a T. I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then that Cancer energy, which is obviously opposite your Capricorn as
Yeah.
rising, so motherly and intuitive.
Yeah, I think that that's why I wanted to work with kids initially too. I've always worked with kids. It was, I always had a babysitting job growing up, and in the summertime I was always a camp counselor. And then I loved school and I loved learning, and I couldn't settle on a specific area of study in university. So I thought, well, what can I do where I don't have to pick something? Oh, I could teach, and then I get to work with kids, and kids are lovely because they're themselves and they're so open and all of that. And then I just started teaching in a different kind of way, because the spiritual path was very much present. And I kind of got started with my business when I was on maternity leave, which was in the middle of my Saturn return. So
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Ooh, I get so excited when I'm like, okay, how it's so cool to hear that these women who have been on maternity leave have used that time, potentially that Capricorn energy, to and go after something, like you used, obviously you were busy. Like it blows my mind not having kids and
Mhm.
like all what you would have had to do during that time. So I'm excited to hear more about that.
Yeah. I think something that people don't talk about, like, don't get me wrong, being a mom and having a newborn and going through all of that is a lot. And I can't even remember the first 3 months of bringing my daughter home just because of the sheer exhaustion of, getting used to a new schedule with a newborn. Your body is going through usually a lot. I mean, there's the odd time where you hear about these women who are having these absolutely magical like birth experiences. They push for 2 minutes and they sneeze and the baby comes out and everything is magical. I tried and aimed for that to happen, but it wasn't the case. That's okay. But yeah, the first 3 months were really challenging. But then after I kind of got into a bit of a flow with my daughter, something like that they don't necessarily tell you is that babies sleep a lot, a lot, except in the middle of the night when you want them to sleep. So I had these windows of opportunity with nap times and things like that, where I was able to do a little bit of work and kind of start creating something. So yeah, I think I used that time of change and transition and kind of trying to figure out who I was to start the process of reinventing myself. And that's what Saturn return energy is,
Yeah.
kind of. It's an opportunity, right?
Okay. Beautiful way of putting it. Such an opportunity. And you were doing something for yourself, like reinventing yourself is a Saturn return thing. And obviously you were doing it in a few different ways. So yeah, can we go back a little bit? I'm really curious to know, before your Saturn return, there's that progress lunar turn time where I talk about this a little bit, and it seems to happen for people around 27 to 28, sometimes a bit before. But I'm really curious, like what was happening for you in your life during that time, just so we have a bit of backstory before leading up to your actual Saturn return.
Yeah. It's interesting because right around that time, I got engaged. So I was planning a wedding around that time. And in a way, I suppose, it was the backstory to, becoming a different person, like, right. Because I changed my last name when I got married. I moved out of my parents' home. Like I lived with my parents until I got married. So a little bit traditional in that way. And yeah, so lots of planning was going on, I think, at that point in time. And I'd always had a little bit of an anxiety issue kind of growing up, and having that Virgo moon, I think, added to it. And I think around that time, I had some pretty significant experiences with anxiety. I was supply teaching. I had just gotten a job at the with the school board, but I also had a part-time job and was trying to plan a business at the same time, was really starting to see my spiritual gifts opening up and awakening. So there was a lot going on in terms of just me trying to juggle everything and being overwhelmed and becoming a little bit more anxious, I think set the tone for what was supposed to be transformed moving into that actual phase of the Saturn return.
Wow. That is like, that makes a lot of sense. And especially as you said, like that Virgo moon, your lunar return, the progressed lunar moon would have been in Virgo at that same time. So they
Okay.
matched, it was like matching the frequency, which turns that dial up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you had already been experiencing anxiety before, and then that like goes all the way up, you're like, whoa, okay, I really have to work through this to kind of get
Yeah.
to my next whatever is going to happen after this. So that does make a lot of sense. And I know a lot of people who have said during that time frame, there's a lot of mental health stuff that comes up. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
And then so after that, I guess, as you're kind of moving into this, you planned a wedding, you're like starting a business, all this stuff is happening. And so you get to 28, which is like peak Saturn return.
Yeah.
What's happening then?
Oh God. So I was married at that point, and I don't know, I'd have to look at the actual timeline, but I'm pretty sure that we were waiting to move into our home. So we had purchased a pre-build, and the construction kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And we were living with my in-laws, who are lovely people. But when you move, especially I think living with your parents for such a long time, and then when you move out and suddenly you are living with someone else's parents, like it's not your own created experience, right? And I was actually living about an hour away from my parents, so it kind of felt like really I think removed from my old life. Like it was a little bit heavy, and that time frame of when our home would be built kept getting extended. So we were supposed to live there for 3 months, and it turned into 6 months and a year. And so that whole time frame, I think, was spent I want to say in like a very mild kind of depression, to be quite honest, because I was feeling a little bit like, oh, is this what marriage is? But it was just because there wasn't anything really bad happening within my relationship. It was just a weird, adjustment period, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does. It kind of sounds like, again, like you're going through like, who am I now?
Yes.
Place. Which makes total sense. Like it's such a, like that age is so interesting because you're not in your 20s. Like you're not the person that you are in your 20s, like, and then you're getting ready to change into your 30s and you're like, what? Like I like how you said, is this what marriage is? Like you don't know when you're trying things for the first time. Like
Yeah,
buying a
absolutely.
home for your first time, right? Like yeah, so that would
It's
make
like, yeah, it was a big growing up moment. Like, as children, I think we like fantasize about what adulthood looks like, right? Like you almost can't wait to be a grown up and make the rules and, eat whatever you want to and go to sleep whenever you want to and all these kinds of things. And then you do it and you're like, okay, this is
this
harder
it?
than I thought.
You mean this is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I 100% hear you on that.
Right.
I like how you said that. It's like a growing up time. It really is.
For sure.
So what were you learning like during that? Obviously, you said there was a bit of a mild depression, but like what kind of things were you doing to help yourself or that you can remember or yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of dove, I think, headfirst into my spirituality during that time to kind of get me through. I had always really been interested in psychic gifts, the paranormal, witchcraft. Growing up, it was always something that I gravitated towards. Like I was that kid bringing home scary books from the library and then being too scared to go to sleep at night, and then still just like wanting more of it. It was like, I knew that I would freak myself out and scare myself and whatever, but I couldn't help myself. There was something that really drew me to these topics and these subjects. And in high school, learned more and more about the practice of witchcraft. And I had mentioned this to somebody else recently, that I was a bit of an armchair witch because I was raised Catholic and had a lot of guilt associated with potentially practicing something that might have been against my religion. And so I kept it very kind of under wraps and did as much learning as I could, but less of the doing. The doing kind of started more in my 20s. Okay. But through the study of witchcraft and then the practice in my late 20s, I started experimenting a little bit more with shadow work, which was a good time, I suppose, because I was already kind of going through some mental issues, like challenges with my mental health. And that was helping me to kind of look at my fear and resistance that maybe I was holding to change, which PS I think is the key to kind of making it out smoothly through the Saturn return, is not not resisting the change. And by the way, like all the changes that came up, like because I'm a Capricorn and I'm ruled by Saturn, I almost feel like sometimes people who are ruled by Saturn take a little longer with the learning, right? And like Capricorns, like we're the goat, like we trudge up these mountains, and sometimes it takes us a while. We're earth signs, we're like not fast. So I feel like only recently have I actually stepped into that new Nicole, and I'm 34. So technically it's not the time, right? But I think it just took me a little while to kind of feel comfortable and processing my fear with the help of witchcraft, and by looking at my intuition in a different kind of way and trying to figure out, what is fear and what is my intuition, and doing that for other people and helping other people with readings. That really helped me to develop that gift and kind of let go of that fear. I still have problems with it from time to time, and I'm sure I will. Like, what's a Virgo moon if they're not like slightly anxious? But
oh my God, that's so true. But all of that, like that was so profound. Like the fact that you said, I think the key there is to like letting go of that control and resistance. I mean, I don't know, but like that is shadow stuff. Like that is like, okay. You started at the beginning of this saying that like when you were a kid, like you were scared, but then you wanted it. It's like, it's almost like you have had this journey of befriending that shadow or that darkness, which then allowed you to start stepping into those gifts of maybe like working within that metaphysical realm. I don't know if you agree, but that's sort of what I'm like hearing from you as you're saying this.
Yeah. And I think that one of the differences between witchcraft and the larger kind of new age spirituality community is the emphasis on balance. And now obviously, depending on who you're talking to in the community, they might tell you like, there's people who are very shadow work heavy, right? Where it's all about the shadows all the time, right? Like, and I feel like I'm definitely not like cool enough and dark enough and goth enough for those people. It is what it is. It's fine. I actually have a lot of friends who are like that, and I think they're absolutely lovely. It's just their path, right? But then on the flip side, we have more of the new age community, which is very much focused on the law of attraction and how like the things that you're afraid of are actually going to manifest in your life, and tell that to a person with an anxiety disorder. And that's not very helpful information. That like, don't think about this thing that you're always thinking about and always worried about, because guess what? It's going to manifest. And I learned quite the opposite with witchcraft, which was that, you're manifesting the energy, right? You're bringing in more fear, not exactly the thing you're worried about, but just more fear and more things to be afraid of. So there was a lot of inner child work that had to be done around that time. And I think that, like looking at your North Node too, with the Saturn return can be really important, because up until that point, we've been told a story about who we are, right? Like I said, I always worked with kids. That was always, people expected me to become a teacher. And I did a good job with it, and I did it. And then when I started really not liking it, and it had nothing to do with the kids, but when I started really feeling out of place in a school with the people that I worked with the hours that I kept, with the demands of teaching, and that was scary, because I was like, well, who am I if I'm not this person? Right. So I had to figure out who she was.
Yeah. That actually like makes me tear up, because I relate to that so deeply of, you know, I was an education assistant, and that feeling of like, who am I here now, when I'm feeling like I'm growing out of that, you know, it can even be related to the nodes. I love that you brought that up. But it's like my soul is wanting to go in this new direction, and I don't know that person who wants to go in that direction. I only know what I've been told that I am good at, and that what I know. And it's scary to, you know, put yourself in those situations to say, hey, actually, like, this place, I don't feel like I can be myself here anymore.
Yeah.
It's so scary. That might have been the scariest thing. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be more, but like, that was a very scary thing to do. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's wild. Your North Node is in Aries. I just checked. How do you feel that shows up, like, in regards to your Saturn return? Do you have anything kind of on that?
I think that has to do with me embracing an entrepreneurial line of work, like 100%. I think it was a little bit about, you know, actually, now that you mentioned, or now that I brought up the school stuff, kind of the difference between being seen and unseen seems to come up here with that. Because at school, you know, and I actually had somebody channel this in a reading for me. They're like, I'm seeing like two Nicoles, a Nicole who wears her hair in a bun and wears, you know, glasses and this and that and whatever. And that's fine. Like, I still am that Nicole on some days, but that's not how that's not how I normally would show up to be my best self, the way that I want to, right? And I was never showing up. I felt like there was that mild depressive piece that kind of came in with going to school every day and feeling like I couldn't talk to people about who I was, and just kind of working through things and teaching the same thing over and over again. And I would try to make things as exciting as I could for the kids, but, you know, working in a very strict and regimented kind of environment, that doesn't leave a lot of room for creativity. And I mean, there's some amazing teachers out there that still make it happen. But I just felt like my potential was being very much limited. And then that Aries energy, like, I like to call it Queen of Wands energy from the tarot, because she is like, you know, she's like a boss lady. Like, she doesn't need anything, but she wants things. And that's kind of the energy that I feel like I can embody through entrepreneurial work. And, you know, there's still so much learning that has to happen with that Aries North Node, but I feel like I'm kind of stepping into that energy more now in my life than I had in the past. And it feels really, really good.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to like finally do it.
Yeah.
I straddled the both jobs like for a long time, like for about 5 years. I was, you know, going to school on my lunch break, managing my social media, coming home, putting my daughter to bed, doing a few readings, and do it all over the next day. And it was exhausting, right? Like, it became very exhausting. And I was told by so many different people, like, Spirit's going to make it impossible for you to do both. And that's what happened. The pandemic happened. Oh my stress levels went up, and I was like, no, it's time. It's definitely time. If there was ever a time, it's now.
Oh my gosh. Like, this is so good. I'm like, wow, I'm having so many like mind-blowing moments. Like, even the fact that you said you straddled, like, you literally straddled both worlds, like you were doing both jobs. But in that, I heard as well, or like, maybe this is sort of intuitive, of like having both identities. And like,
oh, totally.
which I don't know why I've never, like, literally, I'm like, this is my, you said bonding glasses. I'm like, this is what I used to wear to the school.
And I'm very
time.
consciously, like, as I was explaining that, I'm like, oh shit,
No,
she is have her, and it doesn't mean anything about for other people. It's just,
I love it because here's the thing. I'm like, this is what I used to wear to the school.
right?
Like a mind-blowing moment of like, oh, like there is this identity that when we're going through like big shifts, like, yes, okay, on one level, you can literally, let's say, get rid of something in your life. Like you said, that job, right? It became impossible to hold on to. But on some level, our identity and comfort still holds on to that because it's comfortable.
Absolutely.
And that's something I've been noticing a lot within my own Saturn return. It's like, oh, like I'm still really holding on to this person because it's comfortable. So like, what would it look like to actually shift, right? And like you said, sometimes like you still wear this stuff, but like,
Yeah.
what does I love that you said this. It's like, what is that best version of you like? Like, what do they do? Like, how do they show up? Like, that is such a profound, I'm like, boom. I hope people are having like mind blowing moments right now because that was so good.
So this the thing about like how witchcraft all works into all of this, right? Is like,
Tell us
whether you call it witchcraft or whether you call it manifestation or self-awareness or like whatever the word is for you, you get to co-create your reality, right? You get to decide who you are and who you're becoming. And the only person that actually can, I mean, obviously, I believe that spirit helps us, or I wouldn't be a witch, right? But we have a huge role to play in what we're willing to do to accomplish what we want, right? And to become that person that we want to be. And sometimes it's a little bit of a fake it till you make it situation where you show up every day and you dress like the person that you want to be, and you really kind of put in the time and the effort, and you embody that person that you're becoming even before she's fully arrived yet, right? So I think that it is about transformation. It is about stepping out of the box. It is about doing things that make you feel uncomfortable. And it is about embracing something that's not familiar, right? Because that comfort zone that we stay in it because it's familiar, even if it's not good for us, right? It just feels better. It feels like something that we know how to do, but we know how to do more.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. Like, I'm obsessed with this. This is why I find these conversations so helpful. Everyone has something they've been through. And you have shared so much of like, you showed up, like you kept showing up, whether it was like 30 minutes on your break or, at nighttime, and you had that stamina or grit, as I like to call it. And you said it was exhausting. I'm curious what you would say as a Capricorn to people who are like maybe in that right now. Like, it's like, it feels like, and I think a lot of people are actually feeling this in some area of their life right now because we've had to let go of a lot we've been asked to through the pandemic. B, people are starting new careers, new jobs, all this stuff. And I believe there's a Capricorn energy that needs to kick in, and you have to say, I'm going to get on my goat here and get to the top of this mountain. But what would you say to those people who are like, this is really hard. Like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Like, what would your Capricorn self say?
It doesn't have to happen overnight. Like, it doesn't have to be this. And, like, I keep talking about witchcraft, but we're going to talk about it.
I love
again.
it, please.
There are practical applications for witchcraft, right? Like, there are spells that can be cast to assist you with certain things, and those tend to manifest hopefully in a faster, more obvious way in people's lives. But there is that underlying work that takes time, right? Like that big transformational work. It's not overnight. Like, it doesn't happen where you go to bed one night and you set that intention that you wake up and embody your most authentic self. It's like, no, she just shows up one day, and then you realize like, oh, that's a little bit of who I'm looking to become. And then she becomes stronger and stronger as as you work on yourself. Right. So, I think taking one step at a time, taking a break, setting realistic and achievable goals for yourself. I feel like a lot of people like to work with this like 5-year plan idea. And that's very exciting because a lot can happen in 5 years, right? But maybe it needs to be more like a 5-month plan to kind of get things started, and making things work for where you're at. If you are feeling really low, if you are feeling like you're depressed or you're anxious or you're going through something mentally, a lot of things are going to feel out of your comfort zone. But just in the same way that like taking medicine sometimes can be a little bit uncomfortable for people, or, your medicine doesn't taste good or whatever for little kids. It's like you do the thing that that you don't really want to do in order to feel better, right? In order to be better. And you can just do a little bit of it every day. And sometimes it can feel like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but eventually you're going to have those days where you take 5 steps forward, and it all kind of will balance itself out in the end. You'll get where you need to go. Yeah.
I love that. So beautiful. And it is very profound. It's so simple, but it's like we want now, we want to go now. And I think what I've been noticing for a lot of the Saturn return is it is a steady, gradual thing. It's not overnight. And I appreciate so deeply when people share that, because in the world that we live in, it looks like things happen overnight. Oh, you have 5,000 followers on Instagram. They must have done that like that.
Yeah.
And that's not the reality. I mean, maybe for some people it is, but like, do you know what I mean? It's more of a gradual growth in so many instances. So I really appreciate that. Okay, curious. So I love this so much, but now I want to know, like, you were in the pandemic, like you have a daughter, your business, you're like, I'm going for this. Is this what happened?
Yeah. So I had tried to see, every time I would try to like make it work in a way that made me still feel attached to my old self, it would not work. So what I mean by that is, I guess it was 2020, the summer of 2020. So the pandemic had just kind of started. The kids had been out of school for a little while at that point in time. I put in a request to take an unpaid leave of absence for the year. I was nervous about fully committing to quitting my job. I didn't want to lose my seniority. I was scared that, like, what if it doesn't work out? I'm not going to be able to get my job back, yada, 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 yada. And of course they said no, because they didn't really want people leaving the profession, I suppose, at that time with the pandemic and needing people to kind of carry things through. So I took that as a sign. I took that as a sign from the universe that it wasn't time to go. It wasn't time to leave. And looking back, that probably was a really bad decision, but maybe one that I needed kind of as a Capricorn to kind of have that one last difficult trudge up the mountain to remind me of what I was leaving behind. So that next year, which was on and off, in class online, was really rough. And thank goodness I had a wonderful EA with me to help me through that year. And I had wonderful children with me that year, and it was all great, but very much I had the sense that that was my last year, and that I was definitely not going to be going back. So once summer 2021 came around, it was right around Lionsgate time. It was actually that Friday the 13th in August, so just after the Lionsgate, that I put in a formal letter of resignation, because work was good. And I just thought, okay, if clients want to keep coming, they're going to keep coming. Things will keep showing up for me. And then of course the universe throws you a big surprise, right? Because I resigned and I was really excited, and I was still booking clients and everything was great and everything was awesome. And then the first week of school came, And of course, you have that little moment where you feel like, oh shit, did I make the right decision here? I had to return my key to my principal, and that was weird. But that week, things got slow. And looking back, I'm thinking, well, of course they would have gotten slow. People were busy with their kids, and life is a little crazy at that point in the year. But of course, I took it as some sort of indication that I had made the wrong decision. And so when I dropped off my key, I thought about asking my principal if I could be put on a supply list, or if there was some sort of way that I could still keep my foot in the door. Something told me not to say anything. And when I left, and my school is in like a subdivision, nowhere near like places where there would be a whole lot of animals or anything. But when I left the building, a skunk like walked right past me. I'd never seen anything like this. You know, I'd had lunch duty and stuff at this school, never seen any animals before. And I took it as a like, no, like this place stinks. Like, obviously, like, obviously it doesn't, like it, you know, all the teachers out there who are hearing me, and if you love your job, like, yay, good for you. And I'm so excited about the work you do, and you do amazing things, but it wasn't working for me anymore. And then of course, when I kind of let go of that fear, I feel like Saturn was able to give me my little kiss, which apparently happens, you know, when you make it through on the other side. And then of course, like things picked right back up again, the way they had been before. So, it was interesting. Just a lot of change. And it was a leap of faith. Like there is a moment, like I know the date, I know the time that I actually like pulled the trigger and did the thing. But the lead up to that, it took like 5 years for me to feel comfortable to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it 100%, like, I just have so many parallels with what you're saying and so many confirmations, but I also know a lot of educators who, if they haven't decided to do something differently, I have heard a lot of people speak about like similarities to having these sorts of feelings. So I'm really glad that this came up in our conversation. And I hope it helps people who are in the education system, or, you know, are whatever it might be. Like there are multiple ways to be a teacher. If you're somebody who's like, I want to teach, but I want to do it in a different way, you know, like that's a possibility. And that I think is so huge. You know, to watch you and watch, like there's Reiki teacher, like there's so many possibilities.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that we talked about that. Okay, can you quickly tell us like a little bit about the witchcraft that you do? Because and like all the things. I'm just like, what is this?
Yeah, no problem. So like I said, I have kind of been on this path for a long period of time. There are lots and lots and lots of different styles and types of witchcraft. There's very specific witchcraft traditions that require initiation and formal training. You know, I am what I would call more of an eclectic practitioner, somebody who kind of likes to take inspiration from a lot of different places. The first thing that I ever did was I got my Reiki master. So before I started doing the readings, I was already kind of working with energy in my own way. So within witchcraft, people who practice witchcraft usually are people who are sensitive to energy. So they likely will be called to things like energy work. And then I started working with crystals. I got my crystal healing certification and did some of that sort of work for a little period of time. And it all kind of encompassed what I was already doing in my personal practice with witchcraft. I had always used crystals to manifest, whether it was creating a charm bag by, you know, placing some stones and some herbs with my intention and carrying that with me as a physical talisman throughout my day. Like there's probably a lot of people who listen to your show that already practice what I would call witchcraft, but they might call it something else, right? So it wasn't until I became a little bit more confident about showing my full self, and I think the Saturn return had something to do with this as well, that I thought I should go public with the witchcraft and witch identity. It was just something that was not going away. The word felt very true to me, very comfortable. A lot of people use the word witch as an abbreviation, or is that the right word? Abbreviation? No. to symbolize woman in total control of herself. That's kind of something I hear a lot of people say. For me, it's a little deeper than that. Like, I do work with a god and a goddess, and I do work with their energies and the energies of other spirits. My ancestors are involved with my path. There's a lot of meditation that goes on, and some very specific rituals that I engage in and practice. And then when I work with my students, because I also run a year-long modern witchcraft course, that is more about remembering your fullest potential and remembering that everybody comes into this world with a divine magical birthright. Whether you choose to embrace it or not is up to you. And whether you call yourself a witch is up to you too.
Oh my gosh. That is like, I just had this like visual of you in like, I'm obsessed with Scotland, probably for a reason. Never been there, but like my soul is like, you got to go to Scotland. Like,
Yeah.
Obsessed. But I just like saw you in this like all this green, like very like emerald kind of like, or jade even like kind of colors.
Oh, I
And
love
just
that.
like such like grounded and almost like welcome.
Well, it's so funny that you say that, because I just closed out my the first year of that modern witchcraft course. So last year was the first time I ever decided to run it. And actually tonight I have my first class with a new group of students, which is going to be really fun. But over the weekend, I just did a final in-person ritual with my first group, and it was done in a stone circle. So it's kind of interesting that you're bringing that up, because it feels kind of in alignment with where we just were. So,
oh my gosh, that is, I love it so much. It's just sounds like such a beautiful offering as well. Like, we know that the rise of the feminine is, coming, and
mm-hmm.
we're already in that. And I just feel like that sisterhood and that connection of like being together in those situations and or experiences, I should say, is just so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. So thank you for being a facilitator in those. And I need to come to Ontario because I would like to do an in-person one.
Well, you would be most welcome.
One day when I can get there. Anyway, thank you so much. Before we wrap this up,
Mhm.
I want to ask you, like, what would you say to somebody right now who's going through their Saturn return?
To hang in there, to feel safe about asking for support if you need it, and to I feel like I want to say it gets better, but I don't want to use that term because it's not affiliated with it, but it's a similar feeling of like embracing who you really are and then feeling really uncomfortable with it. It's this like butterfly out of the cocoon sort of experience. It will get better. It will feel better. It's not a linear, straightforward healing experience. There's going to be hills and valleys. Just hang in there.
Like a metamorphosis.
Yes.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And what word would you use to describe your Saturn return?
Transformative.
Love it. Love it so much. Where can everyone find you if they want to come and connect or, sign up for a course? I am going to be looking into this, which I love. I'm so obsessed recently. I don't know if it's because it's October or what, but anyway, where can we find you? Yeah.
So I'm on Instagram. That's totally my preferred platform. I am on Facebook, but if I don't respond to you for a couple of days, it's just because I forget it even exists, to be quite honest with you. It's not a platform I feel called to. But yeah, I'm on Instagram at Highest Good Readings. My website is www.highestgoodreadings.com. And that's where you can book readings and sign up for classes. My witchcraft course right now is closed until next fall. When I reopen again, I'll be, talking about it a lot online. And there will be lots of little offerings and pop-up things. I also do a monthly full moon spirit channeling circle. So everybody who comes to that gets to sit in on about an hour-long ritual. And then in sacred space, I live channel messages for the people who come. So that's capped at 12 participants, and it usually does sell out, but every now and then it doesn't. And I would love to have more people come and join me for that. It's really fun.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's incredible. I'm definitely checking out one of those. I want to come.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm coming. That's so much fun. Amazing. Well, I'll link everything below, of course. And then, yeah, also on Saturn Return Diaries, you guys will see that I always make little reels of like little sound bites. So I always pull out a little clip that I find very helpful. So I'll make that as well, but then obviously that'll be tagged, you'll be tagged in it so people can click on you from there.
Cool.
But I just want to say thank you so much. This has been like I don't know how this happens, but I feel like Spirit was like, Courtney, you need to do this Saturn Return Diaries podcast. I literally resisted it for months. And I was like, why? Like, why am I doing this? And I seriously, every time I have a conversation with someone, it feels so healing. It feels like I just walk away with like poof, moments. And I just really want you to know how grateful I am for this conversation.
Oh, I'm so
Means a lot.
happy.
Mhm.
I'm so happy. Yeah, I was listening to when Jen and when Ashley had come on, I had listened to their episodes, and I'm like, I follow you and I knew who you were, but then when I saw that you had a podcast and that you were like, and your branding is gorgeous, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It kind of put me in mind a little bit of like Mean Girls, like the Burn book and stuff. I'm like, ooh, I love this. So yeah, I'm like, I need to talk to this girl.
Yeah, I'm so grateful you reached out. And that is like the Burn book. All of that was all my creative ideas come through Spirit. That was it. I made all of that in like 2 hours. Like
That's
the branding.
amazing.
It was all, I don't know how that happens, but anyway, it did. So
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, everybody go and follow Nicole. All the links will be below if you want to work with her or go say hello and say hi, because I think that that's something that, again, that connection piece between social media is so important. So reach out, say hello if something, impacted you. And yeah, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, leave a review, and I will see you guys in our next episode. Okay. Bye-bye.